Hi everyone, welcome to the Delaplane Arts Center. My name is Kristen Butler. I'm the Director of Programs here, and I am standing in for Corey Fry, who's our exhibitions manager. Unfortunately, he's had a family emergency, so he's out today. I would encourage everybody to please make sure to make some time, if you have not already today, to visit all of the exhibitions on view. We've got 2 new exhibitions, of course, the Camera Clique, where you are right now, as well as the Quilt Guild, which is right next door. And then there's a couple exhibitions that are holdovers from last month in the gallery on the side over there, and then in the hallway, and the newly named Moreland Gallery upstairs as well. Please pick up a new magazine if you haven't already had it delivered to your home, and check out our listing of classes and workshops and exhibitions that are coming up in the winter. We'd love to see you back. And that's it for me. I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Cam. Thank you all so much for coming.
Thank you, Kristen. Thank you for coming to this artist talk for the Frederick Camera Clique. My name is Cam Miller, and I am the president of the Frederick Camera Clique. And today with me, I will be joined by members Stephen Greenberg, Gary Giernart, and Bill Stover, who will each have a portion of this presentation. The Camera Clique was founded in 1984 as an associate member of the Delaplane. As a matter of fact, if you look out the window over there, there's a brick building that says Ideal Garage. And that's where the Delaplane first met, and the Camera Clique first met in that building on the 2nd floor before this building was turned into the Delaplane Visual Arts Center. We currently have 140 members in the club. Not all are active, but they all are on our rolls and they all receive our newsletter. Most are from Maryland, but some are from Pennsylvania and some from West Virginia. The majority of our members use digital cameras. There are a few who do film and who do pinhole photography. Again, that's film, but the majority of ours are digital. Some are just iPhone photographers too. None are professional. No one makes a living doing the photography, but all levels of skills are welcome in our club. A number of our members belong to multiple clubs. So some belong to the Antietam Photographic Society in Hagerstown. Some belong to the Central Maryland Photographers Guild, and that's in Marriottsville. And then some belong to Gaithersburg Camera Club. So a lot of our members, like I said, are multiple clubs. Sign language interpretation is available at all of our meetings as well. The main objective of our club is education. Some clubs are very competitive. They have competitions every month where members submit photos and gain points and compete against each other for top honors. But our club has decided a long time ago it is going to be educational, and so all of our speakers and activities are for learning more about photography. We have monthly meetings from September through June. We have a monthly member showcase of images. You can go to our website and see those. We have field trips and impromptu meetups. An example of an impromptu meetup would be like, let's go to Baker Park tomorrow morning and find the wood ducks that have been hanging out there. And Gary's going to show you some wood duck photos in a few minutes. We have some workshops with hands-on experiences. So for example, I think it was in June, one of our speakers was macro photography, and then we followed it up with a workshop here at the Delaplane on macro photography. So it was a lot of fun trying to get everybody's cameras to work right on macro. We have an annual juried show. I'll give you more information about that in a minute. And we have our annual member show. And this is our annual member show in this room today. We have 2 social events, one in August where we have a picnic, and then our other social event will be in December. It'll be a holiday. We're going to do a scavenger hunt at night up and down Carroll Creek, and we're going to have a happy hour in this room in December. And we have a very active private Facebook page. There's a public Facebook page, but there's also a private Facebook page. Not all of our members are Facebook users, but we have about 120 who are on the private Facebook page. And that's where a lot of activity happens back and forth. The club meets here on the second Wednesday of each month at 7 p.m. But in September through December, and then in April through June, we have hybrid meetings, meaning some are on Zoom coming into the meeting and some are in person at the meeting. But January through March, when it's cold and dark and no one wants to drive in case there's sleet or snow, we have our virtual meetings only via Zoom. In July, we'll have our juried show reception, and August is our summer social event. Let me make sure. Yes, okay. And August is our summer social event. So to learn more about the club, you could visit our website at www.frederickcameraclique.org. Our member show is an unjuried show, meaning that no one judged and selected the works that could be in this show. So I put out an appeal to all members saying, you are all welcome to submit a piece for the show. Now, not everyone prints their work. Not everyone is interested in showing their work. So I was able to get 49 pieces here from our members for this year's show. So that was great. There were 46 members who are represented. If they had 2 smaller pieces, for example, they could submit 2 pieces. So some people submitted 2 smaller pieces instead of 1 larger piece. A group of 3 laid out the show. That's always a hard thing. You get all this work in, there's no theme to it. You really don't know what you're going to get until the members show up with their work, and it's all laid out on the floor, and then you don't just hang it, you want to try to have some sense about how to group it. So 3 members came early on Thursday and laid out the show, what they felt worked the best, putting it together. And then about 8 of us showed up at 2 o'clock to actually hang the show. And that's kind of tricky too, because you got to get everything level and you got to get the even spacing between everything. And all images should be 60 inches off the floor. The center should be 60 inches off the floor for the same eye level height. And then everything has to be balanced and straightened. And so anyway, it's a group effort. And we'll save questions for later, but it's a good thing that photography was invented, because without it, we'd have no Frederick Camera Clique show and no annual member show. So Stephen Greenberg is going to share with you right now a very brief history of photography. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Don't blink. Okay. So obviously I can't do this in any kind of depth, but what I would like to concentrate on is how hard photography used to be and how easy it is now. So what you're seeing here, by the way, is an 1845 double box French camera in the collection of the George Eastman Museum, which used to be George Eastman House. Why they changed it, I have no idea. But this puppy is about 12 inches by 12 inches by 12 inches, and the lens is the size of a 12-ounce can of soda, and there is no shutter. You can kind of see a little metal flange sticking up in the middle of the lens. That's kind of the shutter. You took the whole plate out, went out and had a cup of coffee, and put the thing back in. Okay, we live in such simple times. And I hate big PowerPoint quotations, but I have to put this one up. John Schradkowski, among other things, was curator of photography at the Museum of Modern Art for a couple of decades. He promoted the works of people like Deanne Arbus. And he has a really interesting point that I want to kind of stress at the moment, that we look at the history of photography because we know how the story turns out, right? We have all this great stuff. And as Cam pointed out, these are all digital pictures, okay? But back then, when they were first coming up with this, they had no idea what they were inventing. Okay, no one sat down and said, I'm going to invent something that's going to why? Okay, so when you look at, kind of the Three Stooges here, Daguerre, who invented the Daguerreotype, which I am told was originally pronounced Daguerreotype, but no one does that. And the thing about Daguerreotypes is that they are one-offs, okay? The piece of sensitized material in the camera was the final picture. There was no negative, there was no way of reproducing it. Fox Talbot invented a method using a negative, but his negative was made out of paper. And Scott Archer invented a method of using glass plates as the basis for your images. So it's a question of expectations. We take pretty comfortable, poses about how the picture is honest. What was in front of the camera is what's recorded. It's accurate, okay? What's there is what's there, and it's reproducible. I mean, we sit down, I was walking up and down the Camera Creek just before I got here. All these people with their cell phones taking pictures of those really cool boats. And I'm not a Frederick person, so I've not seen this before. And then they send it to their 7,000 friends. And like 7,000 copies of the picture in one click. It's like kind of scary. Daguerreotypes, which was the first commercially practical way of making a photograph, as I said, they were unique. Okay, you could not reproduce from the original Daguerreotype. If you wanted another one, you had to take another one. And there's no easy way of putting them into a book because it's a metal plate. And like hammering it into the book would be kind of messy. So when you look at these pictures, and you may recognize one person, okay, you see Edgar Allan Poe in the lower left-hand corner, and Phineas Gage, who was a kind of history of medicine figure of some weirdness. That's the guy who was impaled by a metal spike when he was building a railroad. Yeah, Tori knows this image, I think. Okay, and the spike went through his eye, and yeah. But each of these was unique. You could not make a copy. And they're small. They're about that big. And a little bit better was the Ambertype process, where you did have a glass negative, but in point of fact, the negative plate was actually what you passed around to show your buddies. Because even though it was a negative image on the glass plate, you put something dark behind it, usually black velvet, put it in a little frame, and you pass that around. Again, not easily reproducible. When Fox Talbot started using paper negatives and then making a second print, he was putting his chemicals on paper and then soaking the paper sometimes in oil or in wax to make them a little bit more transparent, but not really so great because you're seeing the paper as much as anything else. And here you're seeing from 1835, the oldest surviving paper negative that he made. He owned an abbey, okay, Laycock Abbey, which he inherited from his family. It's nice having an abbey of your very own to take romantic pictures, right? And you're still in the bedroom slippers. And of course, I have to mention another process which didn't quite make it into the mainstream. So this is Anna Atkins. This is called a cyanotype. It's actually a photogram in the sense that you take your object, in this case some fern, put it directly on the piece of paper, expose it to light, and you get your picture. No cameras involved. This is a process that has had something of a rebirth because it's easy to do and it's cool. I recently saw some folks who made a cyanotype the size of a king-size sheet. What they did is they took the sheet, put in the chemicals, laid it out on the ground. People laid down on it, and then you wash the sheet and the image becomes permanent. And they did that just after COVID. There's a story there. And even though, and this is 1858 now, you have processes that gave you very sophisticated looking images. You have the young woman romantically dying, and her mother and sister and father are all there. And this looks very, very composed and, high tech, except to get the exposure right, they actually had to take 5 different glass plate negatives, cut them apart, and piece them together because there's not enough dynamic range to get everything. Okay, so this is hard. This is really, really hard. And in the years between 1858, really in 1900, photography got easier until you get George Eastman, who first of all was the first man to commercially produce glass plates that were pre-coated, and then the original Kodak cameras with the slogan, "You push the button, we do the rest." And it's that point, really from 1900 on, that photography becomes something that people can do without having to have a whole wagon behind them with their chemicals or coating the glass plate with a wet emulsion and exposing it before the emulsion dries. And so you get such an enormous range of photographs. And there's a trick to this selection of photographs. Anybody know what the trick is? If you recognize any of the pictures, you'll figure out the trick immediately. They all look very different. They're all black and white pictures produced really between 1900 and about 1950. Anybody know? It's all the work of one photographer. His name was Edward Steichen. And I am of the opinion that Steichen was the most versatile photographer in the history of the craft, starting with very gauzy self-portrait kind of stuff to portraits of movie stars. That's Greta Garbo. By the way, behind the lace, that's a very young Gloria Swanson. And even abstracts like the ones you see in the upper corner. So we live at a time when photography is complicated at one level. I mean, there's more computer power in your average DSLR than in the computers, the mainframe computers of my youth. But gosh, we can do such wonderful things. And you're seeing them all over the walls here. So I will stop with this little quote here. Again, getting back to the very beginning, they were inventing something. They weren't quite sure what they were inventing, but gosh, it was astonishing. And it still is. So thank you. Oh, trivia point. This is a picture of me taking a picture that's on the wall in this room. And it's dawn in the Outer Banks, and I'm actually being lit up by the screen of my digital camera. That's the only light source. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Steve. Yep, there's his face. Okay.
Just look for the mustache.
Camera. Okay. That was a brief history of photography, yes. What inspires us as photographers? If you look at anybody's Instagram, if you look at your own Instagram feed, it's obviously the food that's on our plates, cute animals, cute puppies, and obviously ourselves. But there's a lot more that inspires us as photographers, and so Gary Gierenart is going to share with you some of the images that have inspired him.
Thanks, Cam. By the way, before I start, how many of you are not part of the Camera Clique? Not photographers at all, just curious. Great, I'm going to be talking not mainly to you, but at least I just wanted to mention that a lot of us in the room do photography for fun. And we're part of the Camera Clique because we're part of a community just because it's fun to do. And I joined Camera Clique 2 years ago. It was actually in this room I met Cam just dropping by. But I've been into photography probably since I was 5 or 6 years old. My mother was a professional photographer. And my grandfather, by the way, I should say I'm from San Francisco. My mother's from San Francisco. My great-grandfather's from San Francisco. And it kind of goes back in time that we were kind of into photography because it was a cool thing to do, over the era. But I just wanted to mention that what inspires me is somewhat unique to me, but I think there's some common things among all of us that kind of gets us into the arts and makes us feel like we want to make a difference. So let's go to the, oh, I guess I advanced this here. So this image here kind of illustrates that what inspired me in the beginning were photographers. And because there are lots of photographers who have made some incredible images. Ansel Adams made that one on the left. That goes back to 1923. It's from the High Sierras in California. Ansel Adams was, I would say, a playmate of my grandfather. They lived in the same block in San Francisco. And I knew him while I was a kid. But when I was in graduate school, I was talking with him at his house in Carmel. And I told him that I had done some Sierra backpack trips. And so he showed me some of his images from the Sierras. And I decided to go up to find the places that he had photographed. And this is a photograph I took 60 years after his photograph. Just to kind of inspire me because, you know, he was one of the greats. And I was a scientist, you know, I'm a physicist, oceanographer, atmospheric scientist. So photography for me was something which was fun to do. It was almost a way to keep my life sane as a scientist. But it's something which inspired me not only for the artistic side of me that I strive to be, but it really helped me in my work too. It kind of makes one more creative because this is a creative angle to what one does in real life. So from here on, I'm going to show a few images that I've taken. And I would say what inspires me of the images I'll show are the expressive and unique features of these images, something you want to remember. And it's also just something which I want to carry forward and kind of share with people because it kind of shows something which I would say is somewhat unique. So going to the next one, this is actually my daughter when she was younger. This is in San Francisco. If you look around the room here, there are some incredible images, but what strikes me are those images that have a title. And there's one over here, which I looked at the image, and it's a nice image until I looked at the title. And the title was, Those Fish Have No Chance. And in this case, it was my daughter Sophie who was basically telling me that I was wrong and she can't go back to the hotel. But anyway, these are the kind of images that I like because they're very expressive. It's something you remember. And going to the next one, this is in Baker Park. Years later, that's my daughter in the upper right. And I had this in the local paper as an image, but it's just kids have some incredible expressive feelings that they can show in an image. And if one can capture that, I think it really brings back some creative nature that I like to share. This is a photo. I take a lot of race photography around town. And I took photographs this morning at the race here in Baker Park. And I got to say, most race photographs are boring. You see them kind of struggling. Their moods are bad. They're suffering. But if I can get them to jump or do something really crazy, it makes an image something that I want to remember for the rest of my life. And this is one of those that became the, I would say it was the main image they showed for the Steeplechasers Running Club here in Frederick, so it's on their website. Similar to the one that Cam put up that I took on with the wood duck. But this is a woman who was running the race up in Walkersville last year. And I could see she was struggling, and I just ran out and I said, jump as high as you can. And that's what I got. So it was kind of lucky, but I try to do that for all the race photography that I do now. I think you all know that Frederick has a high-wheel bike race. I think they took a 2 or 3 year hiatus because of the pandemic, but it came back this year. I took this photograph of these guys, I think it was 4 years ago in DC. And the guy on the right-hand side his name is Daniel. He's my next-door neighbor over here on Rockwell Terrace. The second guy from the right he's a Swede. He's the guy who won the race the last 2 times. But and the guy I'm just going to walk up here to show you. This guy here, he won the race, I think the time before last time, but these are local guys, local images. It's in DC. It's right at sunrise, so it's really hard to take a photo right at sunrise. But what I like about it is the backlight of the bicyclists. But the neat thing is, sometimes getting your most creative photographs for me are when the sun is low. You get those long shadows, and I kind of look for those, and it gets me out of the house too. And I'm going to share a quick story as kind of like a sidebar here, and that is my daughter's in college right now, and she's doing her senior thesis, and her senior thesis is actually on the nature-health connection. Just getting out of the house into nature has some pretty good evidence now that it really improves your health quite dramatically. And she tried to use photography as an example in her senior thesis. So I'm just kind of saying that that's a benefit of not just being with the camera clique, but just getting out into nature to take some photographs. And I'm going to show a lot of nature photographs in just a second. This is from just a few months ago. Same three guys that I just showed earlier. The Swede, my next door neighbor, I guess that's just some other guy. I don't know where he's from. But it's just, I like these action shots. And everything from here on is Frederick, and it's just to make the point is that you can get some really cool, creative photographs which have meaning to you within a 10 or 15 minute walk from here. Everything nearby, you can capture some incredible images just by going out and just looking for the unusual, looking for something which is different and something that has meaning to you. Whoops, I went too fast. Okay. I took this one about 3 months ago, just in Carroll Creek, just down in Baker Park. I like it because at least starting around May or June, the herons come out each year, and the moment they're out, I'm in the park. I try to get down there either early morning or in the evening, and this is one of the adolescent herons right at that break in Carroll Creek, kind of before it drops down into downtown Frederick. But this is just a cool image I took, and I like it because this heron was really hunting for fish. And I waited for about 20 minutes. It wouldn't move, so I did. I just gave up. But I still got a nice shot out of it. This is another heron shot from the summer. What I like about this one is not just the heron itself, but the back pattern. It was reflections off the waves. I just kind of got it right. But there's just so much you can see in Frederick. And in the summer, the herons are out. They're great subjects. And this is up in Riverside Park, if you know where that is. It's just off of Monocacy Boulevard, just north of Frederick. And in there, you can find owls all through the year. This is an owl photo I took last year in the early summer. And this is a baby owl I took about a couple of weeks later, last spring. But I was just out in this park yesterday. I saw 4 owls. I mean, you can find owls up there almost any time if you really look hard. But I'm into owls. I often say that because they're just really unique animals. But they're somewhat exotic, and I would say they're so unusual, I kind of capture them because they are so unusual. They got lots of woodpeckers up there, if you're into woodpeckers. And my final slide, because I know I'm going to get pulled off the stage, is we kind of had, among the Frederick Camera Clique members, kind of like a couple of pet wood ducks. We've been photographing these 2 wood ducks for the past 6 weeks. They've been right here in Baker Park in Carroll Creek, over by the clock tower. And I would, since it's a 10-minute walk for me to get down to the park, I would almost go down almost every day, after work or during the lunch break. And this is just one of the photos I took. And that duck is just incredible. I can't imagine how many people from Camera Clique went over to capture this wood duck. I think a lot of the people in the room did, but I think my closing statement, and this is my last photo, is that there's just an enormous amount of great photography you can take right here in Frederick. You don't need to go to the Sierras or the Appalachians. You can just do it in your back door, just walk outside, be creative, be quiet, stand still, and something's going to come to you if you don't go to it. So I would say keep at it. If you wanted to join the Camera Clique, you have a community that will reinforce your interest. And I think I'll just stop there. Thank you.
I have to agree with what Gary said about finding great stuff right where you live. In Maine, a photographer that I go to Maine a lot, up to Maine Media Workshops, and I went to a talk by Sig Harvey. She's published a number of photography books. And she said, I used to think I had to go to exotic places to take great photographs when all I had to do was look around where I live. And that's it. You're right. Okay. So what now? I'm just going to read this. For too many people, the photos they have taken reside only in their computers or on their phones. Many post the image on social media and move on. Bill Stover will share with you ways that you can showcase your photography in the physical, not just digital world.
Well, they saved the best for last. I get to talk about paper. Because everybody will be riveted from the moment on. But no, that's always been a quandary, especially in today's world, about what do you do with these photographs? I mean, everybody here probably has 300 at least, if not thousands, on their phone. And some of them are quite good. A lot of them are quite good. And it's just from people like you and me that go out and see something they like and they take a picture of it. Well, now it lives in what I call digital, pardon the language, hell. It sits on a camera somewhere, and 10 years from now you're scrolling through it and you go, oh yeah, I forgot about that. So what can we do? Well, there's a myriad of ways to display this in the physical world. Some of them are the standard formattings, which you see a matted print in a frame. A gallery wrap, which there are two perfect examples in the back room of a gallery wrap. Typically a gallery wrap is a canvas, and you wrap it around the edge and it stands without a frame. However, you can go to a floating box mount, which the gallery wrap fits in, and you have a gap around your frame and the picture, which gives it a very unique look. You have a box mount. People love the box mount, and it's where it's going to have a black or a white, well, it could have red or green, side to it, and it's almost a gallery wrap, except it's just printed on the surface. There's nothing on the sides, and that's why it's called a box. It looks like a box from the side that is mounted to. And then we're printing on metals now. We're printing on acrylics and glass. So where does this take us? It takes us really to what do I want to print this print on? Because you see some on metal, which are very high gloss, almost, I call it high definition photography when you print on metals, because you're almost looking at it as it appeared in real life. You have matte finishes, which are not glossy, and they're typically going to be on a paper or a fine art paper. We'll get into that in just a minute. You have glossy. This is typically what we look at when you go to 7-Eleven or CVS and take your thumb drive, stick it in, and you get a bunch of pictures out. That's going to be a glossy. That's also, we'll discuss the type of paper they're using there. And then you have luster. I don't see any luster around here. Luster is when we print on a satin, which is very similar to gloss, except when light hits it, it absorbs the light so it doesn't reflect. But it has that shiny appeal that so many people like. And then the high gloss metallic we just talked about. And I'm not following this, am I? So then we have to decide on the media. When you go to CVS or something, they're using a wood pulp paper. Okay, that paper is going to last 2 years, 10 years if you really take care of it. It's just the same type of paper except with a glossy coating on top of it that you get from Hammermill when you go to buy paper to print your printer. What we use as artists typically are more along the lines of what we call a fine art paper or a high cellulose, alpha cellulose with cotton fibers. Okay, this paper costs a lot more, so people go, well, I can go to, name it, My Photo, Shutterfly, or any of these. and I can pay half what you're charging me. You're right. Not going to argue that. But they are not using, they're using the pulp paper that everybody uses, as opposed to a cotton finish. What does the cotton finish give us, or the cotton with the cellulose? It gives us an archival quality. By archival quality, by museum standards, and correct me if I'm wrong, means that this picture is going to last without any color degradation or any degradation whatsoever for a minimum of 50 years. Then, on top of that, you can put a UV protection. When you put the UV protection, your picture is now going to last for hundreds of years, if not more, depending on the quality of the archival paper below it. So there's a lot that goes into it, to include the weight of the paper, anywhere from 40 grams per square meter to 400 grams per square meter. Typically, in the photographic world, we're going to be using 170 to 240. I do have some paper that's 300 grams, but I rarely use it. And that's going to be a dull, I don't want to say dull, because the right pictures on your flat or matte finishes look really good. The right pictures on canvas look good, but what looks good on canvas may not look good as a high gloss. And these are the problems that you all have to look at when we're going from one to the other. Canvas, live canvas. To me, it's one of the best canvases made. It goes through the processing part to get the canvas made 3 different times. It has 3 times the quantity of cotton, and it also has absolutely 0% acid to it. Okay, by having 0% acid, we're maintaining the quality of the paper and the picture. Remember, the paper we don't care about. We care about what the picture looks like on the paper and how long it's going to last. And that's Dubrovnik. I love it. The nice thing about this particular paper is if I print a blue and on my computer, as long as you've calibrated your monitor, I have the same color blue in a different picture. It's going to look the same on another print. It'll be the same blue. You won't have this variance because different papers will allow you to vary. Fine art paper. This is a paper that doesn't have as much cotton to make it like that canvas is. It is a paper, and you've seen it and you've felt it. It actually will have a texture to it. When you run your hands over it, it's not smooth. There are ridges through it, little bumps, and these papers have a polymer inside of them, and that creates, they're easily torn until they're coated. Okay, they have to be coated. If they're not coated, it's going to sit up there and it's going to gather dust inside these particles, inside. But the pictures look amazing on them, especially a picture that you might like on a canvas that doesn't have that ultra sheen. And not all pictures look good glossy. I mean, obviously our wood duck looks great glossy. But I don't think the mountain scenes typically will look good. The one in the back is a prime example of something that should be on not a high sheen. It's texture, the picture has texture, so let's put some texture when we print it. And that's what that whole thing's all about. And then high gloss. You know, what is high gloss? You see several, a bunch of them around here. Are there any acrylics, Kim?
No.
Okay. There's no acrylics in glass. Glass really won't come out as a high gloss like you might think. It's more like a matte finish, quite honestly, when you print on glass. But when you print on metal, once again, I can do and please understand, I can do a matte finish on metal. You can also do a high gloss finish on metal. It all depends on what you want. But metal has some unique features. One is we can't do a Guise printing to it. The inks or the dyes, which is different than jetting, the dyes for Guise don't adhere to the metal. So we have to go back to a standard 5-color inkjet style unheated ink to get onto the metal or the acrylics. So there's a lot that goes to it. Then we get to the best finishes. Oops, did I pass it? Oh no, I already went past that. I'm looking at 2 things. Then you get to your mountings. This is kind of what I was talking about. You have the floating frame mount right up here. And this is where we've taken a gallery wrap, in this case. It could be a flat mount. It could be an aluminum floating. It could be the box. It could be any one of these. And we've set it inside a frame with that 1/8 to a 1/4 inch gap all the way around it. Gives it it looks like it's floating in the frame itself. And then you have a floating mount where you've seen a couple of them. There are several floating mounts here where it's just a picture on the wall. And it floats anywhere from a 1/2 inch to 2 inches off the wall, depending on what you would like. You have your matted, you see plenty of the matted standard. This is what most of us are used to. And the gallery wrap, I've even highlighted the corner so you can see it a little bit. That's where we literally wrap the canvas all the way around. Or, you have to be careful. You could do it with a satin paper because it's more of a satin cloth. But on a fine art paper at 200 and let's say 40 grams, you're not going to be able to bend it. It's going to crack and it's not going to look good. So on gallery wraps, you have to be careful. But on box mounts, you can pretty much put anything you want on the box mount. I could go on and talk about this riveting paper for hours, but I'm going to hand it back over to Cam for question and answer time.
That is always a big decision. The easiest thing, of course, is to print your photo or have it printed. So I get a lot of questions as the president. I want to print my photo. Where should I send it for printing? Well, there are a lot of companies that you can send them to. And a lot of us like to use Bay Photo or MPix or even places like Shutterfly. But then it's how do I frame it? How do I mat it? How do I? Just a few of us in the club actually print our own photos. I do print my own photos, and I offer to print for other people because you want to keep those little ink jets flowing in your printer and not have it dry up. And then it's a matter of the framing, and do I go to Michael's and get a frame, or do I go to a custom framer, and then by the time, sometimes when you've got a piece finally done and ready to go on the wall, you might have $300 invested in this, and how much are you going to sell it for? You don't want, and the gallery's going to take a commission, and it just gets very complicated. So that's why most of us kind of take the easiest route, I guess, of printing it and matting it and framing it, and there it is on the wall. So thank you. We'll probably have some more questions about those things right now. So as Bill was pointing out, we have some canvases on the back wall. This other back wall has a couple of medals. There's a medal on this wall. There's a medal over there with the parachute and the vintage car. So do take a minute to look, and there's one in the back. There's a number of medals. So do take a look at some of the different framing styles that are here as well. Are there any questions at this point? You can ask questions of any of us at this point. So me about the clique or the show, Steve about the history of photography, Gary about his inspiration, or Bill about media. Yes?
Bill, well, this is what's the best printer to use to print your photos on?
Depends on what you, at home?
At home.
Depends on how much you want to spend.
Yeah.
And how large you want to print your image. So, for example, I have an Epson P800 that can handle 13 by 19. But it takes 9 cartridges, and each cartridge is $54 a piece. And so that's why I need to keep my printer going so that those inks don't dry up. Then there's the Epson P600, which has smaller cartridges, but also holds the same size paper. And then all of those printers, they take up a lot of real estate on your desk too, and they're quite heavy. But so what I offer to members is if you want me to print your photo, I'll print it for you, and then I'll charge them for the print. But at least we can sit together at the computer and have it print out, and they say, oh, that looks too dark, or oh, there's a white spot there, and then I can correct on the fly.
So can you print on metals?
Yes.
Whatever?
I cannot at home, but there are a number of companies and some local that can print on metal. Yes, yes. So that again, I can just say now, Bill has recently opened a company. He's having an open house today, as a matter of fact, locally. You want to tell a little bit about your company right now?
Well, we're Gerber Photo and Fine Art Printing, and you were asking the question. The printer I use is a Canon GP Pro 4000. Takes 11 ink cartridges, and she said they're mine are 150 a piece.
But how big is your printer?
The
Size of this
I
room.
can do 44 by 60s. Okay, we print all the way up to 44 by 60. I also have an Epson for my sublimation, which is how we do our acrylics, our metals.
That's a
and
heat
glass.
process, right?
Yes,
That's
it's a heat process.
For-
Well, everything I do is a heat process because we use an acid-free foam backing to everything, even our back box mounts, because that's what's going to give us our rigidity. It's also going to give us the longevity. This is what we do. Is we print. You saw the different styles that are up there. I do them all, and I love doing it. It's a lot of fun. I do my own. It all got started because I'm a photographer just like everybody else in the room right now and interested in it. And I got tired of sending my stuff away. And Miss Jean here was tired of me yelling and screaming because it would come back and it didn't look like what I wanted. So she said I could buy the printer, but I had to make it pay for itself. So now I have a company.
And it's just around the corner.
Yes, it is.
Go ahead. Again, you had a follow-up?
Just follow up. The wood duck. What? Would you do that as a metal print?
I would do the wood duck as a high gloss. Now, there's something called metallic paper that you could use. And the metallic paper, believe it or not, I can do a gallery wrap with it. I've done it a couple of times. It's difficult. It takes a lot longer than a typical one. But yeah, I would probably recommend, because of how vibrant the colors are, of doing that wood duck on either an acrylic or a metal. Both are extremely, very glossy.
Steve?
Just wanted to add something. So Epson also makes a P900 printer, which is 17 by 22, and it's basically the same ink set. So if you're going to buy a printer now, the initial investment's not that much more, and the ink set is the same, but that's not. And Canon also makes printers in that range, but I've been.
They have an
I've seen
image graph 1000.
Yeah.
And instead of, what'd you say, 9 inks?
I have 9 cartridges.
Yeah, it only takes 5.
So it sounds like everybody's into Canon printers, not HP printers.
No,
I'm Epson guy.
Epson.
I would say Epson and Canon, when you get into large format, have cornered the market on large format. Epson absolutely is the only printer for anything you're doing with metals or acrylics. So once again, it comes down, I own a Canon, I own an Epson. And then I print out my flyers and everything on an HP.
But for a home printer, a lot of people like the Canon Pixma, is it? It's
The
a small
Pixma,
one
yeah.
that'll do, your 8x10s and maybe, the 4x6s.
Yeah, the 1000 is one step up.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what it costs, by the way, 1000.
Right.
Well, thank you very much.
Sure. Are there any other questions, comments?
Nothing for the exciting, riveting paper?
I could do that with you. I used to curate a rare book collection, but I don't want to put those people to sleep.
Yeah. Okay. Well, take time, please, to enjoy this show, and we'll be around, so ask questions about what you see, because many of the people who took these photos are here in this room right now, so we can tell you where we took it, why we took it, what design choices we made on the printing or on the processing. We didn't even touch on editing. Editing is another huge portion of photography. So there's a lot to it, but we all have great photos right in our phones. So I encourage you to take a look at some different ways that you can use those and have fun with photography. Thank you.